this movie ended up making 1.44 billion. It was the number one movie of 2023. So
Great.
something that people saw as such a huge risk.
Mhm.
My goodness, it just spread like wildfire. Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah,
Well, here we are.
here we are.
It, as of this recording, it is mid-February of 2024. We're in the middle of awards season, and
Mhm.
it's about time that we jumped into some of those movies that are going to be getting some attention during awards season. And
Yup.
this is our first official breakdown of 2024, and I wanted to kick things off with a movie that we both enjoyed, that we thought was fun,
Oh
and
man.
yeah. So it was released on July the 21st of 2023. It's an eventful weekend that we will get to.
Yes,
And it was directed by Greta Gerwig. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for Barbie.
bro. Barbie, I loved. It was so fun. And it felt special again. And you know that how much I love the theater, and I know how much you love the theater and the experience of going to the movies. And I haven't really felt in a long time anything like that weekend. There was a buzz in the air. Everyone was excited to go to the movies. It wasn't like, oh, just guys are going to the movies, just girls are going to the movies. It was like, no, it was an event. Everyone wanted to go to the movies. It was great. And Barbie was one of those films. And I went with my wife. We wore pink. I wore pink Air Force Ones.
Yeah,
I
same.
had
I
the
wore
pink
pink as well.
shirt.
Yeah.
Yup, and she was wearing the hot pink pants and the black top and the pink purse and the pink shoes, and it was so fun to just be a part of that again. And it's been the first time in a long time. And you and I saw a movie on that weekend together, and I remember just looking around and being like, man, it feels so good to be at the theaters again in this type of experience. So I'm glad that Barbie was a part of that event, because I absolutely enjoyed this one.
Yeah. So for those of you who may or may not know what we're talking about, Barbie and Oppenheimer were released the same exact weekend, and it
Whoo,
was
so good.
dubbed by the internet as Barbenheimer.
Yes,
And regardless of what you went to see that weekend, you saw people decked out in pink, and you knew
I
what they were there
loved
to
it.
see. And some people decided to wear suits to go see
Yes,
Oppenheimer. I saw that too.
yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
um, some people decided to watch both movies in one day, or one movie one day, one movie the other. And it was a debate of what you wanted to see first, you know?
Yes.
So um, it was a fun weekend, that's for sure.
It was
Absolutely.
an
And
absolutely a fun weekend. Now,
yeah.
I will say this. I was one of those people who was planning to try and watch both. So maybe I could try to watch both in one day. But it didn't end up that way, and I'm glad that it didn't. I'm very glad. Haven't seen the event of Barbenheimer. I'm absolutely relieved that I saw each movie on their own day, because I think both movies really deserve that time to breathe. I think they
Right.
both deserved it. And interestingly enough, they're completely different movies in tone and everything. And the idea of being like, oh, what do you mean? You can't just go watch a Barbie movie, and just watch it and then go on to the next thing. And after we discuss it, no, Barbie absolutely needed time to breathe as much as Oppenheimer. So I am glad that I watched them individually. And yeah, I was very, very, very happy for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get started here.
Yeah.
So, first of all, let's just take a look at the opening scene here. And
Yes.
with all the young kids playing with
Hmm.
their baby dolls, and then it's the emergence of Barbie. And I want to say, what was that? 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey opening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just the
Yeah.
opening there. It's been parodied so many times with the
Hmm.
apes, I want to say, and
Yes.
but they did it this time with the children. But they're throwing away their baby dolls because Barbie just arrived, and it's
Yeah.
Margot Robbie in all her glory.
It it was so great because obviously, you know, the idea of Barbie is supposed to represent, you know, you can do anything. And the idea you have these little girls playing and they're all playing like the mother role. Like they're like, this is what you're meant to do, to domesticate it, be a mother, take care of the baby and do this. And Barbie shows up. First of all, Margot Robbie's perfect as Barbie. Let's just put that out there. And we'll discuss that more later. And then seeing her there and you got the music playing and the kids are just smashing these babies and smashing the dishes and whatnot. And it's so overly dramatic and meant to be funny. And it was just, I remember just laughing. Like, this is great stuff.
Yeah. So we have stereotypical Barbie and played by Margot Robbie and fellow dolls. They reside in Barbieland.
Yeah.
And it's a matriarchal society populated by different versions of Barbies, Kens, and a group of discontinued models who are treated like outcasts due to their unconventional traits.
Yeah.
Talking about Skipper, Weird Barbie, who we'll get to meet, and so on.
Weird Barbie. You even got Alan.
Yeah.
I'm Alan. Yeah. Hi, I'm Alan.
So while the Kens spend their days playing at the beach, considering it their profession, you know, so what's your job? Beach. I'm not a lifeguard. Beach is my job. Yes.
Beach. And it's, again, and what I love about the opening is, because again, I wasn't really sure what kind of movie we were getting. I through the advertisement promotion, I'm like, okay, is it just gonna be like a super over the top fun movie? Like, I'm not sure. And the opening is very much what I think I traditionally thought the movie was going to be. Again, there's musical numbers, there's music, there's like her floating down, and it's very Barbie-esque and very toys. And then we get to the beach, as you mentioned, and then it's like you have our Ken's there, and you know he's like, you know, it's just beach, and it's a super silly opening because Ken tries to catch a wave and he bounces and he flies like tons and backflips and everything, and it's so ridiculous, and you're like, okay, is this the whole movie? And again, not shading it because I was having a good time, but I think the movie's going to surprise us as we keep going.
So the Barbies hold prestigious jobs in science, politics, media, and so on. So we have Beach Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, is only happy when he is with Barbie and seeks a closer relationship, but she rebuffs him in favor of other activities and female friendships.
Yeah.
So, you know, just a small example here, you know, what are you doing later? Nothing much, just hosting a big block party filled with dance sequences and everybody you know, but yeah, feel free to stop by. Nothing big.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's so great because, like you said, like they make it a point right away to show you that Ken is so dependent on Barbie. Like, what are you doing? You want to do that? He's so dependent on her. And I like that they showcase that right away. And it's going to be a great character trait that we learn about Ken as we continue.
So, by the way, and this dance party's great. You start.
Oh, it's awesome.
They introduced us to all the Barbies in the beginning, but this is where we start seeing like all the different Barbies come to life, and it touched me. Just seeing just all different ethnicities, all different professions, all different body shapes and sizes. We even saw a Barbie in a wheelchair. Like it was like, hey, this is really cool. You know, just not. I don't want to get too deep into it here, but not just an expression of women, but of humanity, you know?
Yes.
So,
and I, like you said, I love that we see that. And this is all in the opening act. This is all within like the first 5 minutes, first 5 to 8 minutes. That's what we're seeing. And it was really cool. And everyone is it's just normal. You know what I mean? Like what it's considered normal in Barbieland. Like there's no hesitation about anything in any regard like that. And this is a really fun scene. We start to get to see some of the animosity between some of the Kens and whatnot for Barbie's attention and everything else. And it's Ryan Gosling was killing me in this scene, man. Like I was cracking up this whole time. And I was like, okay, if he continues like this, he's going to be a huge standout in this film.
Right. So in the middle of a dance sequence at the dance party, Barbie's suddenly stricken with worries about mortality. And she drops the line, "You guys ever think about dying?" And we hear the record scratch, and everyone's like, "What?"
It's done so well because at this point, look, everyone's having a blast, man. Everyone's laughing, and she just brings it up with the thoughts of death, and everything just stops. and you see her like and it's such a great way to introduce it, because again, such a concept to, you know, people in the real world, like that's just a normal concept, the idea of death and whatnot. And in Barbie Land, that is not a thing, and you can tell by everyone's clear reaction of like, what are you talking about?
Right. So overnight, she develops human characteristics, and in the morning, she discovers that she has morning breath,
Mm-hmm.
she has cellulite, and she has flat feet, uh,
Flat feet.
disrupting her usual routines the next day. So, um, just a little bit more human, and we had that scene of flat feet,
Yes,
at
it
the beach.
again, it was it's something so minor. It's something so minor, but
Yeah,
like I like the little things of her waking up and things being different. Like she's burning the food, like the water isn't the right temperature, things like that. And you're just like, oh, and then the idea that like she has cellulite and like that to her is like what, you know, and these are certain things that people deal with in the real world, where they notice something different about their bodies and it can freak them out. And again, we kind of move on. We'll discuss that stuff more as the film goes on, but they're giving you little glimpses and teases. And then the whole flat feet, like she tells her friends, and like she's uncomfortable about it, and like their reaction to her with flat feet, it's just this. One of them just screams, like it's just this guttural scream, and they're just like, you know what you have to do, right? You got to talk to, and we get an introduction to a great character.
yeah. So she seeks out Weird Barbie, played by Kate McKinnon,
Mm-hmm.
and great casting, by the way.
Yes,
And
yes,
Weird Barbie's a disfigured doll, who gets that way because I guess sometimes children, they do certain things to their toys. Cut the
yes.
hair, throw it everywhere, hit it with the marker. You and I had action figures. We did the
Oh yeah.
same thing. Some of our action figures got a little messed up because we played with them a little too
Yep.
rough. Um, so Weird Barbie tells her that she must find the child playing with her in the real world to cure her afflictions. And
Mm-hmm.
Kate McKinnon is awesome. And then, we get the choice, the choice is yours. You know, if you choose these shoes, you get to go back to Barbie Land and forget everything. If you choose these, you get to go to the real world. And she's like, okay, I want to go back to Barbie Land. She's like, no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. No, no.
you know,
We're gonna try this again. We're gonna try this again. You're supposed to choose this, and she goes, "But you gave me a choice." No, no, I'm. It's the illusion of the choice. You have
yeah.
to choose
No, no,
this.
you have to do this.
You have to do this, because if you don't, like this will continue, and even more cellulite. Like she starts freaking her out, and you have this idea of like, hey, like whatever whoever's playing with your doll, whatever they're going through, you're feeling it. So what you're feeling right now is what they're feeling. So you have to go and try to rectify. You got to figure out what's going on with your child and get it fixed. And the fact that Barbie hears all that, and she's like, I'd rather stay. Like it's another thing about humanity as a whole, where sometimes we know what the right thing is to do, but we're just too scared, we're too afraid. It's something new, it's different, and we're not willing to take that leap. And if someone tells us, you can just go back and forget all about it, a lot of us would be like, yeah, I'd rather just forget about it. But she can't. But it was a great moment, because she goes, no, you're supposed to take, you got to take that one, because if not, cellulite, hey, look at me, you know what I mean? And like that's enough to be like, all right, I don't want any more cellulite.
Yeah,
Like
and
what do I
and
got
we've
to do?
seen this right, and we've seen this trope before, but most prominently in The Matrix with the blue pill and the red pill,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
So, um, I was thinking The Matrix, obviously. Once again, there's that movie, you know?
Hmm.
Movies before The Matrix, movies after The Matrix,
After the Matrix.
as
Yep.
you like to say, Ricardo. So, so she takes the journey to the real world, and Ken stows away in her convertible to join her, to which Barbie reluctantly agrees. She wanted to do it on her own, but
Yeah.
he's already with her. It's like, you know what? It's too late to turn back. It's fine. Come with
Yeah.
me. Well, let's take this thing on.
It's another situation where again she's in a position where she doesn't want Ken to be with her. She doesn't want Ken to go with her, and he's just so adamant about it. And he's like, well, like you said, we're already here. And she's like, oh, do you have your rollerblades? And he goes, I literally never leave the house without them. And he just has rollerblades, and it's like, all right, let's go. And they go through the whole thing. But again, it's another reminder of like how Ken just feels so dependent. He has to be with her. He has to prove to her one way or another, like, yeah, they should be together. Like there's a moment in the film that's earlier where he's like, can I stay over? And she's like, why? And he's like, I'm actually not sure. Like, even he's not even sure, but he feels so dependent on her. So the idea that she doesn't even get to go on this trip alone is interesting. And you know, we're gonna learn more about their dynamics as they go on this trip together.
So arriving at Venice Beach, Barbie punches a man for groping her,
Mm-hmm.
leading to her and Ken's brief arrest because they show up
Yes.
with these interesting outfits and everyone's
Oh
staring at
yeah.
them and they're thinking, "Oh yeah, people like us." It's like, "No, you look like a, like you step out of a time machine in the 80s with these loud colors."
Yes. What was also great about this scene in particular too was how different Barbie feels with all the eyes on her versus how Ken felt. She was
Yeah.
like, I feel uncomfortable. She goes, I feel
Right.
uncomfortable for like one of the first and few times, like I feel seen, but not in like the most positive way. Like I feel, and he's like, "Wow, I feel great. Like I feel like I'm getting admiration. Like I feel desired. Like no fear of." I forget what the word. It was something in death, like fear of pain and death, something along those lines. And she goes, "That's weird because that's exactly what I'm feeling." And
Mm.
again, it was another dynamic shift of seeing how Ken is feeling in this world being looked at versus how she is. And you have those outfits on top of everything that are so crazy, but it's just great to see how they perceived it very differently.
Alrighty. So, um, they do get arrested because she hit a man, and alarmed by their presence, Mattel's CEO orders their recapture because then they get to find out that in this fictional world, this happens.
Yeah,
Like,
that it just happens.
yeah, it just happens, and but they need to bring them back. So Barbie tracks down her owner, a teenage girl named Sasha, who criticizes her for encouraging unrealistic beauty standards.
Yeah.
And yeah, she just tears her apart. It's really awful.
This was
Destroy.
a
Mm,
this was one of those moments where you get to see how good Margot Robbie is as an actor, and we've seen him plenty of times. But these girls are tearing into her, and Barbie's, she's like, "What are you talking about? Like, our job is to inspire girls and women. We're supposed to do this." And she tells her, like, "No, look how much you set us back. You set unrealistic goals for women everywhere. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that." And Margot is just like eating it, and she's like, okay. And like you just see, like, and I'm like, man, Margot's such a good actor, dude. Like, she's so good. And she unfortunately just has to take all of that and then just take it in and just walk away. It's kind of a sad scene. It's kind of a sad scene.
yeah. So distraught, Barbie discovers that Gloria, played by America Ferrera, a Mattel employee and Sasha's mother, inadvertently caused her existential crisis after Gloria began playing with Sasha's old Barbie toys.
Mhm.
And Mattel attempts to put Barbie in a toy box for remanufacturing, but she escapes with Gloria and Sasha's help. And the three travel to Barbieland with Mattel executives rather, in pursuit. So they're trying to put Barbie back in the box. Let's just forget about this whole thing. And then she realizes, hey, something's happening here. So she escapes, and she takes Sasha and Gloria with her back to Barbieland. Um, Unfortunately, Ken, he learns about patriarchy in the real world
Mhm.
and feels respected for the first time. Returning to Barbieland before Barbie does, he persuades the other Kens to take over. And we see our first glimpse of this. Well, first of all, we saw how men treated him while he was in the real world and
Yeah.
how he treated women. He's like, I need to see a doctor. She's like, you are talking to a doctor, you know? You know?
There's a lot of good scenes there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones is when he's talking to a gentleman, and we're not exactly sure what profession it is, but it's a man in a suit inside a building, and he's pretty much he wants a job, and the guy's, you have to do this, you have to do that, and Ken says, "You're not really doing the patriarchy right," and the guy kind of does this thing of like, "Oh no, we are. We're just we're just not being too loud about it." You know what I mean? Kind of
Yeah.
insinuating like, yeah, don't worry, like we're gonna take care of you because you're a guy. Don't worry. And it's like it's very brief, but again, it's one of those other reminders of the differences. And it was another example was when Barbie met Mattel, and she looks in there and she sees no women. And she's just like, "Oh, is there any women I can talk to? This and that." And Will Ferrell, who's great in this role, it's just like, "Oh, there was a woman CEO here. It was once many years ago, and she's just like, oh, okay. Like, so again, she's seeing these subtle differences, in how things are in Barbie land versus how they are in the real world, and it's a completely tonal shift for her. And Ken, on the other hand, where Barbie's kind of getting like, well, this is off-putting, like this is weird. Like Ken is just like, yeah, like okay, this makes sense to me. Like this fits. Oh, patriarchy, cool. Horses, trucks, like loud. I'm not okay. And he takes that back, as you mentioned. He takes that back to Barbie Land. So when our three ladies show up, it's just like, oh, oh no, this is not okay.
Right. And it just becomes overly sexist and
Oh, right away, right away.
misogynistic, all those
Yes,
things. And to display this, Greta Gerwig gives a blatant reference to Top Gun with the volleyball game. And
yes, yes.
yeah,
So good.
um, so the Barbies are indoctrinated into submissive roles that they were there because
Hmm.
that's just the influence that Ken had on everybody when he came back. They all turned into agreeable girlfriends, housewives, and maids. Barbie arrives and fails to convince everyone to return things the way they were. Um, she becomes depressed, and we get a
Yeah,
cutaway for a depressed Barbie, which
yeah,
is meant to be sad, but it's not. Excuse me. It's sad because this happened, but they kind of give a little comedic twist on it. And you know me, I'm a mental health advocate, so I said, "Oh wow, so we're going here." And I was doing good, and in the final line, they drop anxiety, panic attacks, and OCD sold separately, and I just lost it.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but Margot, she's sad about it, but we had this cutaway, and um, this leads to Gloria giving her speech about society's conflicting expectations of women,
What a
restoring,
speech, man.
restoring Barbie's self confidence, and um, we're gonna get to it a little bit later on. This monologue is probably why America Ferrera got recognized during award season.
It's
So
really it's really, really, really good. And you know, it's not one of those monologues, and I don't know if anyone perceived it as such. It's not cutting down a singular group of people. It's just her explaining, what they have to go through from men and other women. Like it's a great monologue piece, and like you're listening to it, and I'm not like, as a man, I can't relate to everything she's saying, but I can be understanding.
right.
And when she was saying it, I was like, man, like no, I understand. I get that. Like I get that. Just very, very, very strong performance here and strong monologue for sure.
At the close of this, writer Barbie, she gives a quick shout out to the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League.
Yes.
So
Listen,
yeah,
I was good with it. I don't know how you were. I
it's
know that
fine.
some people, I know some people were kind of like, oh, like, are they mocking it? And I was like, no, I didn't take it as mocking whatsoever. First of all, again, people know how we feel about Zack Snyder's Justice League and release the Snyder Cut movement and everything
Right.
else. We were a part of it. It was a blast. We won that. It was great. So, in my opinion, for any pop culture references to acknowledge Zack Snyder's Justice League is a win to me. So the idea that she goes, yeah, we were in this weird trance. Okay, we were in this weird trance, and for some reason, I really ended up caring about the director's cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League or whatever. And I was like, that's great. That's a great thing, because if you remember, like Ken and the other Kens are very big about Rocky. They're very big about the Godfather movies,
Right.
and we get a reference to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now I don't know about you, but if you're gonna have multiple movies mentioned alongside Zack Snyder's Justice League, Rocky and the Godfather movies ain't bad. So I was like, that's
Right.
great.
Right.
So
Got
again, I
like
never
got
saw it as a
like
dig.
typical guys movies,
Yeah,
basically.
like
That's what
it
they
was just
were,
like, yeah, like these were things that guys were really into and stuff like that. And again, some people were like, oh, like I'm like, nah, dude,
Right.
that was a great, great bit. I
Right.
loved it.
Yeah, and I mean, let's do a little critical thinking here. So the correlation is these men are acting in a ridiculous way,
Hmm.
misogynistically. So they're saying, "Oh well, you're associating those movies and Zack Snyder's Justice League with the misogyny." It's like, no, no,
Hmm.
it's
No,
their
no, no.
their guys' movies. That's why the
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
was mentioned. Um,
yeah.
Well, and we know that, there's no gender assigned to a movie or whatever, but
Nope.
the
Nope.
movie was just referencing that as a joke.
Yes.
It was a
Yes.
joke,
Yeah, exactly. I'm
obviously.
like, it's a joke and it was good, guys. Be
Yeah.
happy. Be
Yeah.
happy.
So, um, with the assistance of Sasha, Weird Barbie, Alan,
I
um,
love Alan.
yeah, yeah, and the discontinued dolls, Gloria's speech deprograms the Barbies from their indoctrination. They then manipulate the Kens into fighting among themselves, distracting them from enshrining male superiority into Barbieland's constitution, and the Barbies regain power. So, um, we gotta give a shout out to, how do you pronounce his name? Simulu. I mean, he's been great the entire
Mhm.
movie, but then we get this battle between the
Oh,
Kens,
it
and
was great.
him and Ryan Gosling are just killing it. And then we get the "I'm Just Ken" music number, and it
Yes.
just wonderful.
Wow. I look, I love musicals, and everything else. So the fact that it breaks out into a dance number, first of all, that whole battle is ridiculous. Like they're coming in off the boat, the other ones are coming from land. They're hitting each other with poses, like they're beaching off, like they're doing beach off on there, and like they're posing and all kinds of things, and like they're hitting each other with inflatables. Like it's just utterly ridiculous. And it was great because it was a plan that were set forward by the Barbies that they were going to get the men to turn on each other, which again, there's this big indication of like quote unquote toxic masculinity leading to war, differences of opinion can lead to war and all this stuff like that. So the Barbies are like, all right, like they break free of the indoctrination, so now they're going to start manipulating the guys purposely, the Ken dolls, and they start showing, like Barbie starts showing attention to the other Kens, and Ryan Gosling's Ken gets jealous and upset, and they do this, and it turns into an all-out war, and it's awesome. And then we get that amazing dance number. I'm just Ken, just it was so good. I was in the theater just cracking up. It was great.
So, having now experienced systemic oppression for themselves, the Barbies resolved to rectify the faults of their previous society,
Mhm.
and they wanted to emphasize a better treatment of the Kens and all the outcasts as well. Barbie and Ken apologize to one another, acknowledging their mistakes. And here's where I mark down where Margot brings that grounded performance into this moment that she's been doing the entire movie. But for me, this is the moment here. She's been over the top, for the movie. She's had her soft moments, but this moment here, where Ryan Gosling just still being Ken, and he's being silly, but she's just bringing that groundedness. He's trying to kiss her. She's like, "No, it's not about that. This is bigger than you or I." And it kind of hit me in the feels. He said, "I was hoping this would be our house one day,"
Yeah,
and
dude.
I was like, "Oh man!" Like,
It-
and she just goes, "Oh." So, and she knew, but
yeah.
just she didn't realize how much he really cared about her. So but it was great because she kind of she talks some sense into him and says, "Hey, listen, I'm just discovering myself now. It's time for you to discover yourself. We
Yeah.
can't be together unless we know who we are." So I
And
just great moment for me.
that whole sequence is great because they keep putting in comedy with Ryan's Ken. Like you said, he tries to kiss her and she's like, no, and he slaps himself. And it's
Yeah.
like he's having such a hard time understanding. Like it's not sinking in. Barbie, it has sunk in, and she's trying her hardest to explain it. And it's so sad because she's apologizing to him, and the argument can be made that technically she didn't do anything wrong. She was never interested in him in that way, and but she also couldn't see how interested he was in her, and she apologized for that. She goes, "Look, like I'm sorry," you know what I mean? And like that's a big move on her part because she was just, again, it was like they just weren't on the same page. They just were never in sync like that. He was always like, "Hey, can I do this?" She was like, "Yeah, why?" Like it didn't register to her. She had no interest in him whatsoever. And when he tells her like there is no Ken without Barbie, like I'm specifically supposed to be with you, like because now we're talking about design, right? Like what are Barbies designed to do? What is stereotypical Barbie designed to do? Madam President Barbie supposed to be Madam President. Astronaut Barbie supposed to be astronaut Barbie. And so Ken is like, yeah, but I'm supposed to be with you. And then you have this great conversation between the two of them, which is like, you have to figure out who you are. Like, who is Ken? Like, that's what you have to figure out before anything else. Like, that's what you have to be. Maybe you're not supposed to be with me. Maybe your identity isn't supposed to be me, Barbie. Like, and it's a great segment. And it's where we get the whole I am Knuff. You heard it, you know what I mean? Where it's like
Yeah.
he's enough. And that was great because he was so dependent on her. He didn't think he could be anything without her. And it's awesome because it just shows why he was the way that he was, and he thought that the patriarchy was the way it was supposed to be, and that that was going to be what won her over. And he has a great line, and we talked about it, and it's kind of a joke, but it's a great line. He goes, once I saw that the patriarchy wasn't really about horses, I lost interest, because none of that was really interesting to him. He just believed that's how it was supposed to be, which is this great dynamic of, and this is why I like the movie so much, is the movie just doesn't tell you like what women are going through in the world, or the Barbies in Barbieland, or the Kens or the men, is this idea that for Ken looked at the patriarchy and like, oh, this is who I'm supposed to be as a man. Like, this is how I'm supposed to be as a man. And the movie's like, no, there's no box for you, man. Like, you can be anything that you want. You don't have to follow this. And it's great. And again, we take that conversation and we lead into the I am Knuff. And I absolutely adore that hoodie.
So Ken, he's having this back and forth with Barbie, and he's just, he's recognizing his lack of purpose without her, as you stated. So she encourages him to find his own identity apart from her.
Mm-hmm.
Barbie, who remains unsure of her own identity, ends up meeting with the spirit of Ruth Handler,
Oh my God.
the Mattel co-founder and creator of the Barbie doll. And she explains that Barbie's story has no set ending, and her ever-evolving history surpasses her roots. So Barbie decides to become human and return to the real world. And she ends up saying goodbye to the Barbies, Kens, and Mattel executives. And sometime later, Gloria, her husband, and Sasha take Barbie, now known by the name Barbara Handler, to her first gynecological appointment. So
Funny.
yeah, they just ended on that moment. I'm ready to see the gynecologist, and then we end it
It
like that
was
because
it was such a good joke, in my opinion, because obviously we're watching the scene happen and we're thinking job interview, something new and exciting, and it's a joke thrown from earlier in the movie where she's kind of getting catcalled, and she's like, oh, like, we don't have genitalia. Like, I don't have a vagina and he doesn't have a penis. Like, it's just, we don't have genitalia. And it's so ridiculous over the top that we go full circle and we get to the end, which is like, I'm here to see my gynecologist. And it's a funny joke because, again, I'm like, oh, she's probably getting a job interview. Like, she's gonna go work. This is awesome.
yeah.
She's gonna get a
And
taste of the real world.
I wanted to point out I it was like the construction workers, they were catcalling her, but then when she
Mhm.
mentioned that, at least they were forward thinking enough to go, "Oh, that's okay.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, and they were like,
okay."
"Hey, that's fine. That's cool." You know what I mean?
You
And it
know?
was like, yes, that it was very interesting that happened because they could have easily written in like, "Oh, like, what do you mean?" Like, "Oh," but they were just like, "Hey, that's cool. That's cool, man."
Yeah.
And yeah, it was cool that they did that. I did want to touch on the conversation that she had with Ruth,
Yes.
because this is the part in the movie where like my eyes welled up a little bit. Like, I cried a little bit because there you have this great song choice being played behind, which we'll talk about in the future, and she's talking to Ruth, and obviously Barbie doesn't know what she's supposed to do, and it always ties into the idea. She goes, I'm stereotypical Barbie. Like, I'm just stereotypical Barbie. Like, I don't know what my purpose is. Again, we go back into Madam President, astronaut, teachers. She's like, I'm just stereotypical. And Ruth is letting her know, like, hey, like, it's whatever you want it to be. And she even asks her, like, for permission. And Ruth is like, honey, you never needed my permission. but just understand what this means to make this choice. What life is, what life will ultimately end. So understand that. And it's a really tender moment. And they have this beat where she closes her eyes and they show it a montage of just women with their families
Yeah.
and their daughters and their mothers. And I remember being in the theater not recognizing any of those people, and I was like, oh, okay, it's just a random montage, but it still got the point across. And I just thought it was really awesome to find out after the movie that it was crew members that worked on the film, and Greta had women who worked on the film and their families, and that just made it even more touching after I saw the movie. But the within the movie, it still got the point across, and it was just a really, really beautiful moment. And Ruth says something, because Ruth is essentially like, she goes, I named you after my daughter, Barbara. I named you after her. And Ruth is kind of being her adoptive mother in this particular scene, in a way of telling her to go. And I wanted to bring up this line because this line choked me up, and I talked about it with you earlier, is where Ruth says, we mothers stand still so our daughters can look back to see how far they've come.
Yeah.
And man, I look, I'm not a mother, I'm a father, and I have two daughters. And that line, whether you're a mother or father, it hit me. And I think that's what makes that line so beautiful, is that, again, this movie never really felt like it was just targeting women. Like, and I know a lot of people didn't want to see the movie because they'd be like, oh, it's just a girl movie. And I'm like, nah, man, it's a movie for everyone. Are there going to be points that are going to speak for women? Absolutely. But there's also stuff in here that men can relate and can understand. This was one of those moments where I was like, oh man, it just got me. It just got me. And then she takes the walk, and she does it. And I was just sitting there like, oh God. I looked at my wife, and my wife was gone, dude.
Oh yeah.
She was like, I had tears or whatever, but she was full on sobbing. And I was like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, definitely. I welled up too. I welled up
Yeah.
too, and you could hear some snuffling during that part too
Yeah.
because it was an emotional moment. So, um, but obviously followed by the joke with Margot
Hmm.
Robbie at the ending, and that was our movie, and
Yeah.
um, it just ended on such an emotional note for me as well. And let's just get some of our initial thoughts here because
Hmm.
when this movie was first announced, Greta Gerwig had done some things before, but it's just like, wow, are you sure about this? That this could blow
Yeah.
up in your face. Like,
Yeah.
um, you're doing a movie based on a toy. It's just like, yeah, but it has to be something else.
Hmm.
That's we as film lovers were thinking, okay, is it going to be something else? Because there's no way we could do something that's been done before.
Yeah.
So um, but we didn't expect this.
No. No.
Just
No.
such a a, a statement. It's just such a deep movie, and there were just so many different societal call outs. For me, it just hit on so many different levels, and um, I don't know. Like I was just so surprised. I was just so
Yeah.
surprised when I went to see it, and I laughed, I cried. It was just it hit on so many different levels. You know?
Yeah. I remember when I heard the announcement for it, and I was very skeptical and worried because I thought it was just going to be another IP cash in. Like, all right, they're working on another IP. Warner Brothers like, oh, we're making a Barbie movie. So I didn't know what we were getting. When I heard that Greta Gerwig was directing, I was a little bit more hopeful and optimistic, because I was like, okay, I don't think Greta's signing on to make a Barbie movie that's just going to be about toys. Again, I didn't think it was going to be this, but I was like, okay, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but I wasn't sure. And then I remember seeing the first set leaks, which was Barbie and Ken in those crazy outfits on rollerblades, and Will Ferrell was in the shot, and I was, what is this movie? I was like, is this just going to be like like an in your face, over the top comedy that's aware of itself and nothing more? Like, is it just to promote Barbie 2? Like, what are we doing? Like, I
Right.
wasn't sure. And watching the movie, it was not what I expected, and I'm grateful that it wasn't. And I'm grateful that it was a movie that was layered, as you mentioned, and there was many things that were being discussed in the movie. Like, for example, Gloria has this other mention, because she's designing, she's drawing Barbies, like different Barbies and depressed Barbie and things of that nature. And at the very end, she goes, "What if we had just like a Barbie that was just an everyday person, like Like, she doesn't do everything perfectly. She doesn't do, this and that. She's just normal. Like, she has a normal job. She's got this, she's got that. And you have Will Ferrell's character, and he's like, that's a stupid idea. And then you have Ruth be like, that's a great idea. And he's like, exactly. That's a great idea. And I love that because Gloria was essentially saying, like, hey, you can be what society just considers to be a normal person. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be an astronaut. You don't have to be the president, and you can still matter. And I thought that was so awesome for her to do that, where it was like, because again, and we talked about this with movies, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent, how certain movies feel a quote unquote strong woman has to be written in order for a woman to be strong. They're like, oh, well, a woman can't cry if she can be strong. A woman can't be vulnerable in order to be strong. And I'm like, no, a woman can cry and be strong. A woman can be vulnerable and be strong. A man can cry and be strong. A
Right.
man can be vulnerable and strong. And it's like, no, those make us who we are. So I love that part in the movie where she was just like, yo, can we just make a Barbie that is like, we're not worried about all that other stuff. Like, maybe life is a struggle for her, and she's still important. She still matters, and that's great. So again, when I saw this movie, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting this whatsoever. But I'm glad we got the movie that we got, because it definitely opened a lot of conversations, whether you liked the movie or you didn't like the movie. I saw a lot of conversations online when this
Oh,
movie
yeah.
dropped, a lot of think pieces, which was great. A lot. Obviously, I saw a lot more women speaking in general about how they felt watching that movie, how they felt seen, how certain moments really spoke to them. And I love that. That made me happy. You know what I mean? As a father of two daughters, like, I look forward to those moments where they can see something and identify with it in the way that they did. The movie has great humor. It balances it with great dramatic elements. And then, they hit you with some feel good moments too. So, like you, I wasn't sure what type of movie we were getting, but I remember walking out of that theater and thinking that was a fantastic ride, and it will be a must own for me on my physical media library.
Yeah. And I did want to interject here. Yeah. Yes, Barbie was a great social commentary, but for me, I felt like it amplified the voices of women without tearing down other people, like
Yes, very much
I
so.
and I've seen that before where um if something that does a social commentary, it amplifies the voices of one group, but in order to do it, it tears down,
Mhm.
another group. And I don't think Barbie did that. Some
No.
people do, but obviously that you're gonna have people like that. That this
Yeah.
movie was quote unquote an anti-man movie, anti-men.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that way at all because I
No.
saw it was just kind of calling us out. We live in a
Yeah.
patriarchy, folks. It's just
Yeah.
the way it is.
Sorry. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. And it was done in a playful way,
Yeah.
just, when he came back and just I keep coming back to that Top Gun volleyball game,
Mhm.
just kinda poking fun at it, but, at the very end of the movie, it's resolved in the sense that the Barbies got a taste of what they were putting the Kens through because it
Mhm.
was a matriarchy in Barbieland where the Kens were the ones subservient, so to speak. So, and they even said that like, "Okay, we'll give you an entry level position and we'll see how things go from there,
Yeah.
So,
And
just that
it was a great mirror reflection on society for a long time. Like you said,
right,
we're still in the patriarchy, and for many, many, many years, women didn't have the rights that they have now. And
right,
when they started getting them, it was little by little. It was little by little. You'll get a little bit of this, you get a little bit of that. So when the movie did it, they did it with the Kens. The Kens were excited, and they were this and that. And I'm like, yeah, it's a mirror reflection of the real world, and I appreciate that. And like you said, I never felt insulted.
I
At
didn't
no point in
know.
this movie was I sitting there going, "Oh, this is clearly an attack on me and my bros." He like never felt that way. And I love Zack Snyder Justice League. I love Rocky. I love The Godfather. You know what I mean? Like I love certain aspects of what they're doing in this movie. Okay, hey, I like that he's playing the guitar to the girl. I think that's cool. I like that. But at no point did I feel targeted or insulted or torn down.
No,
I can't speak for everyone else. Obviously, there were
right.
some people that felt that way. Like, I feel like I never felt that way whatsoever. This is a movie that I would recommend to anybody. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what gender. I'd be like, yeah, watch it. It's a great movie.
Um, and then another thing that I thought, and we'll get into casting a little bit later on, was, Margot did it again, just another iconic role,
Yep,
and I don't know where they're gonna go from here, but it was just like, how could you not have her come back and play this character again after what
she
they
was great.
did in this
She was
movie? And
great.
it was just like, okay, so She played Harley a few times, and we don't know if she's ever going to play Harley again. But just such a perfect casting for Harley, and oh my goodness, perfect casting for Barbie. Yet
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Um, let's take a look at the budget and the box office. And oh, I got a stat for you here. Um,
Yeah.
so the budget was anywhere between 128 to 145 million. So a big budget,
Okay. Mhm.
especially because of the cast that we're going to get
Yeah,
to
that
here.
had a very big cast in this thing.
The box office, this movie ended up making 1.44 billion. It was the number one movie of 2023. So
Great.
something that people saw as such a huge risk.
Mhm.
My goodness, it just spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
Everybody went to see this movie. It wasn't just kids, it was adults. It just exploded.
Yeah.
And ended up being the number one movie of 2023, which is awesome. Um, typically at this part, we talk about, Oscar recognition. Obviously, this is before the Oscars happened, so we'll have to talk about it after the fact. But Barbie got nominated for a few Oscars.
Oh, it did. Yes, it did.
So we have Best Picture.
Mhm.
So the highest honor, Best Picture.
Yeah. Best
Um,
Picture Barbie nominated.
we have Best Supporting Actor, Ryan Gosling. We have Best Supporting Actress, America Ferrera.
Mhm.
Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Costume Design, Best Production Design, Best Original Song twice. One for I'm Just Ken, um, and the other is What I Was Made For, Billie Eilish.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 nominations.
Not too
But
shabby.
there's two that people are focusing on here, and I agree.
Yes. Yes.
Margot Robbie missed out for Best Actress, and Greta Gerwig missed out for Best Director. So,
Mhm.
um, this isn't an Oscar an Oscar discussion here, but they were left off unfortunately. But to me, I feel like this is a win though because
Yeah,
eight,
absolutely.
eight nominations is still a win. You know,
For a Barbie movie, man. If you'd have told me 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, we're gonna make a Barbie movie, it's gonna get nominated for Best Picture.
right?
It's gonna get multiple nominations. Best adapted screenplay. I'd be like, because I would have thought about it the same way I would think of a GI Joe movie, a Transformers movie. It's like these are toys, these are cartoons, these are franchises. I don't see them Oscar nominated pictures, but Barbie came and did it. So yeah, like you, I agree. I think this is a win.
So let's take a look at. Oh man, there's a lot of people here. How much time do you have? So I'll just run down the list here of as many people as I can name and just give some shout outs here. So Margot Robbie, she plays Barbie, often referred to as stereotypical Barbie. And then the variations of Barbie are as follows. We have Issa Rae as President Barbie, Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie, Alexandra Shipp as Writer Barbie, Emma Mackey as Physicist Barbie, and that was great because she's often referred to as a Margot Robbie lookalike.
Mhm.
So I thought that was cool that they got to share the screen together again because they also shared the screen together in Babylon. So let's see who else here. We have Dua Lipa as Mermaid
Yeah.
Barbie. Um, we have Ryan Gosling as Ken, referred to as Beach Ken, and then the Ken variations are Simu Liu as Tourist Ken. We have Kinsley Ben Adir as Basketball Ken. We have John Cena as Ken Maid, the Mermaid
The
Ken.
mermaid, the mermaid. I love
Oh
it.
my goodness. America Ferrera as Gloria, the Mattel employee. We have Ariana Greenblatt as Sasha, Gloria's daughter. Rhea Perlman as Ruth Handler, the
Yes.
co-founder of Mattel. We have Helen Mirren as the narrator. Will Ferrell as the CEO of Mattel. Michael Cera um, as Alan, and so on and so forth. There were so many names to go
Yeah,
through
dude.
here, but just the ones that I wanted to point out there. Um, I think everyone did an incredible job, and you had to get as many names as possible for this movie to work because um, they were marketing it as a big deal, and for it to feel like
Yeah.
a big deal, they wanted to get as many names as possible, both up and comers and established. But for me, it was very clear from the opening scene that Ryan Gosling stole this entire movie.
I I walked out and I remember vividly in my mind, clear as day, saying, I hope he gets nominated for Best Supporting Actor,
Yeah.
because I was like, because look, we know comedy's really hard, and it
Right.
is often overlooked in the grand scheme of things. When you talk about some of the greatest comedians, the work that they do is very, very, very hard. It's very hard to do. That whether it's the energy or trying to invoke laughter from an audience, is very hard. It's very subjective. And Ryan has always been a terrific actor, but he handled the comedy in this movie in such a way that was endearing. It was funny, and then he could still also trap some dramatic acting within a comical performance, which is not easy to do, where he's actually legitimately having a breakdown, where he's crying in the movie, like tears are coming from his eyes, but there's still a comedic element to it, because the Ken character in itself is written as funny, but he's still going through these you know range of emotions, and he does such a good job that when I walked out, I was like, oh man, he was so great. Like, Margot is terrific, but I remember walking away going, man, Ryan was just, oh my god, that dude was so funny, and the dramatic moments were there. And yeah, he's such a huge standout. He's charismatic, he's lightning on the screen, like many others in this film, but yeah, he's definitely a standout.
Yeah. So we're gonna start closing things out here, and oh man, Warner Brothers has needed a hit for a
They did
while. They've
desperately.
needed, because just with all the box office disappointments in the
Mhm.
DCEU, and then even with Hogwarts, the Wizarding
Yeah,
World, like those Fantastic Beast movies just didn't perform as well as
yeah, they were
as they
very
were,
hopeful, and it just didn't land like they wanted.
so it was just they've needed a hit. I think I want to say Joker. Joker was the last time where a DC branded movie, made a substantial amount of money
Yeah,
versus
that
what the
big,
budget
yeah.
what the budget was. So they needed a hit and they got it. And also they went opposite Oppenheimer, and
Dude, they
people,
went against Nolan,
yeah,
like,
and neither movie budged, because
no.
that was with Universal. Ironically enough, Nolan was the one usually making hits for them under the Warner Brothers banner.
Yes.
So
Oh my god,
so
you know Warner Brothers was sweating, man,
they
because
were.
neither budged. And it was, I don't know if it was the type of films that they individually were, why it worked out so well, but I'm glad again that it became an event. I'm glad because they were both highly successful. Both films were highly successful. And it doesn't necessarily happen that often where you can have two movies come out on the same weekend and both just crush it, because everyone was just so into the event. Everybody was seeing both. So, what, like you said, Warner Brothers desperately needed this, and Barbie definitely delivered. Like you said, the high end gross film of 2023, and I'm ecstatic about that. Being someone who watched multiple movies at the theaters that year and enjoyed a lot of them, I was very happy for Barbie.
Yeah. And Oppenheimer didn't do too bad as well. So
Mm-mm.
Barbie was number one at 1.4 million. The number two movie was the Super Mario Brothers movie, an animated
Yeah,
movie,
dude.
and that was 1.3 million. Oppenheimer, an original biopic,
Yeah.
made 957 million, almost $1 billion,
Yep. Yep.
in a day and age where IPs are all the rage. So
Yes.
it was a good it was a good not only weekend but a year for the box
Mhm.
office to show that these two movies just can with that have nothing to do with one another were able to just reinvigorate the box office for one
I
weekend
th
and the entire year as well.
I think, and I might be bold, but I think that those 2 movies, um, play a huge role in the way, original films and certain IPs were being viewed. Again, at one point, it was just comic book films, comic book films, comic book films. If you were making comic book film, you weren't getting a theatrical release. You were going straight to streaming, whatever the case may be. And I think that the event of Barbie and Oppenheimer coming out together, both doing significantly well, Barbie being an IP, but Oppenheimer being just this, like you said, epic rated R film of just nothing but dialogue and exploring history. And it was like, that movie did what, and Barbie did what. And like I said, Barbie's an IP, but Barbie is an IP about, dolls. Again, if you would have told me many years ago, I never would have expected this.
Right.
So I was
I mean,
very pleased for it.
we didn't know it was gonna have sequels, but you could look at it as an origin film,
Yeah,
almost like,
yeah.
like the very first movie in a superhero movie,
Hmm.
like let's just say Man of Steel. That's an origin film.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
came before it. But so something like that if you wanted a little comparison. Um, so Mattel has announced that there are going to be more movies made. Um, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's gonna be a cinematic universe per se, but all gonna be under the Mattel, label. This one was under Warner Brothers. I don't know if the others are gonna be under different, studios per se, but just the standouts here, um, we have, I think, they're doing a Skipper as well. Not
Hmm.
Skipper, I missed it. I had it with me here, but, um, they're gonna do a Barney movie. There's
Yeah,
a Hot
yeah,
Wheels movie.
yeah.
Masters of the Universe, that actually sounds fun because He-Man's
Hmm.
needed a live action movie for a long time now.
Love He
Um,
Man.
there's an Uno movie coming out. Like, so there's a whole bunch, as far as that goes. So, um, I don't know where this is gonna go. You
I
know?
don't either. And look, when the movie was over, um, obviously it made so much money. We know there was definitely conversations of doing a Barbie 2 and doing more. We don't know what the future holds, but we know that Mattel is branching off and they're like, "Hey, we're doing this. We're doing Barney. We're doing." And I remember reading that like, "We're doing
Oh,
a Barney movie?"
yeah,
Like,
I'm
what?
sorry. It wasn't Skipper, it was Polly Pocket.
Polly
That's
Pocket. Polly
yeah.
Pocket. I remember Polly Pocket still exists. I didn't know that until recently. And I was like, "Oh, like I remember growing up with Mighty Max and then the girls had the Polly Pocket and Polly Pocket still exists." And I'm like, "Oh, there's Polly Pocket." Yeah, so I did hear about Polly Pocket. So hey, look, if it works for them, it works. I will say this though. I will say this. If Barbie was an indicator of anything, in my opinion, Barbie showed us because again, men went to go see this movie too, but women are a very, very strong box office phenomenon as well. A lot of times, certain movies will be like, "Hey, like this movie, this action movie, this adrenaline, yeah, we're making that for the guys, even though women like them too. Like we're making this for the guys, or we're making this for this." And it's like, yo, man, like Barbie on paper according to many people, again, people who haven't seen the movie, or even some of the other, like, "Oh, that's a girl movie. That's a girl movie." I'm like, if you want to view it in such a narrow mind about, by all means, do you, man? Do you? I think that movie caters to everybody, but it goes to show you that because a lot of women went to see this, that the women box office draw is there. It is there.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you can absolutely make movies like this and not be scared. Because if they would have pitched Barbie many years ago, might have gotten a no. They'd be like, is that gonna draw? Is that gonna draw? It's like, listen, man, if you make a movie that is going to cater, and especially for women where they can feel like, oh, I identify with this, I see this, I understand that, it should do well. Like, make those movies, greenlight those movies, man. You had a movie about Barbie directed by a strong female director, great female cast, great male cast, had everything you need in a good movie, and it made over $1 billion. Keep doing that. Do more.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Just do more of that.
yeah. Alrighty, folks. That was the Panel Bros official breakdown for Barbie. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe at the Panel Bros on YouTube, we'd appreciate it. Also, if you could let us know how you felt about Barbie in the comments below, give a little shout out to Margot Robbie, Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling, your favorite parts of the movie, and how you think it's going to do at the Oscars, or maybe come back after the Oscars and let us know. We would appreciate that as well. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.